In this video, we're going to pull from some of the deeper concepts from more of the internal tradition of Chinese medicine and really discuss and explore some of the more deeper and profound and more impactful aspects of health, harmony, and longevity. And we'll see how these things are really all linked together and actually all part of the same thing and part of the same process. And how very specifically they come down to particular ways in which we relate to the world, in which we relate to ourselves in basically just simple everyday actions that we all take, which is important to bring up and discuss because often it's thought or believed or felt that these things are always somewhere else or far away from something, or that we can have a tendency to really compartmentalize our life, meaning if I just do these things over here in this box, then it's going to take care of and get rid of all the other stuff over here that maybe I don't really feel like doing or feel like dealing with or feel like looking at. And that's not necessarily the most effective view on the scale of effectiveness. Sure, it's a view, sure, it's a way, sure, it's a path, but if we look at it, maybe it's not so effective, because if we take just 10 seconds and look at our body, we can see that it's all fairly unified, hopefully. And in the Shuangzi, he talks a lot about this, where in one of the passages where he's talking about, what is your favorite body part? Is it your hands? Is it your legs? Is it your head? Is it your eyes? Which one would you have first and which one would you have last? And the moral of the story is, in the simple way, is that it all goes together and you kind of can't have one without the other, meaning we are a unity, we are one process. So now getting into the subject matter that we want to talk about for health and harmony and longevity, really talk about what those things mean and how we can relate those to our lives right now. Well, in a simple way, our hypothesis or our thesis is that we can more easily and effectively achieve health, harmony, and longevity through the harmonization of our will, our heart, and then our this thing up here, which is our mind, thinking, logical brain. And when we say will, when we say heart, we are referring to these terms kind of more from Chinese medicine and less from our Western understanding. Because when you talk to people in the West about heart, where you mention shen or joy or any of these things, it's all very loaded, and we just think Valentine's Day, and we think love, and we think hippies running through fields and dancing with flowers, and like always being optimistic and always the sun being out, but the sun never setting. And we think it's all these crazy extremes, which if you actually read Chinese medicine, you actually read Chinese medicine books, that shit's really not in there. And if it is, it's usually as a result of a poor translation, because we have this character, which means a lot of things in a lot of different contexts. It can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. So you can't really take that and just put that into a word. It doesn't necessarily always work so well. But sometimes for simplicity's sake, that's what you got to do. So anyways, back to the point, that's kind of more what we're talking about. So in Chinese medicine, the heart is often referred to as really the ruler. And all the organs are classified as officials. And then the minister or the ruler or the emperor, or whatever you want to call it, is the heart. And in a physiological sense, this is easy to kind of understand, because if your heart stops, you die. I mean, it's pretty much there's no way around it. And if your heart is at a weird rhythm or whatever, it'll affect the rest of your body. Meaning if you feel happy, heart rate changes. The rest of your body changes. You get upset, heart rate changes. All these other things are affected. So in some simple way, we can see that. And then also from an emotional psychological standpoint, all of the other negative emotions, or all emotions in general, are thought to sort of pass through the heart or the shen or the ruler, whatever you want to call it. So there's that. And then we look at the will. And the will in Chinese medicine is connected to the kidneys, the Deplete Jing, and then obviously connected to wisdom. So those are all part of the same process. And really for health to be maintained or retained or restored, and for Jing to be all of those things restored, maintained, rejuvenated, whatever, the will should serve to protect and maintain life by going through what is harmonious and directed slash known by the heart. So these things really work together. And if you've read any alchemical texts, you've experienced or experimented with any type of Taoist practices, there's often a lot of emphasis on fire and water. Well, that's basically what we're talking about here. Water being kidney Jing, which is will, which is wisdom, all mixing together. And then fire being the intelligence of the heart, which is kind of the ruler. So these two things going together. So in a really simple way, we can understand that if our will is not really connected to wisdom, which we can understand wisdom as the knowledge or understanding to act or not, or to move or not, if that is not really connected to or in harmony with our heart, then somebody's going to get depleted. The shen of the heart could be disturbed or squashed, or a kidney Jing could be squandered and wasted, or both, probably. And then, so what do we mean by harmony? What do we mean by disharmony? Well, what often happens is the intelligence or the wisdom of the heart, the knowingness, whatever that is often squandered or squashed by the thinking brain, which there's often a huge sort of put down that's lodged at the thinking brain, and people read meditation books or spiritual books or whatever, and they're just like, oh, I have to empty my mind, I have to not think, I have to, oh, I think too much, and there's all this like mental anxiety about having mental anxiety, about having mental anxiety, about having mental thoughts, and it just creates this whole thing which is not necessarily that effective or comfortable or pleasant necessarily. So it's really more about striking a balance and understanding really that balance and harmony, understanding that our brain does serve a purpose and it has a function. Otherwise, we might not really have it. We might not have the faculty, but it's really a matter of looking back to our will. Well, what is our will directed and informed by? Is it the heart? Is it just the heart? Or is it the brain? Or is it just the brain? Or is it a combination of three? So really, when we start to break it down, what do we mean by harmony? Because we can all pretty much probably have experienced disharmony, meaning we had an idea about something, like, oh, I should be this, or I should do that, or I should or shouldn't, or whatever. And then we do it, we feel terrible, we don't like it, we feel uncomfortable, we have negative consequences, and then our health very likely responds in a negative way, and we think, that wasn't very good. Sure, we've all had that experience. It's fairly common, because that's the society and the culture that we live in. But then people often go to the other extreme, because they're like, oh, you got to just be in your heart. And you just only go with what feels good, and you just only live in the moment. You just only live in the flow, and you're just only positive, and only nice, and only kind, and only loving, and only all of these things. People try to go all the way to that extreme, and then that's not necessarily as balanced or efficient or effective either. Because either thing taken to an extreme is equally as imbalanced and equally as imbalancing, and equally squander and waste energy in the exact same way. And if you don't like that opinion, you don't like what I'm saying because it's whatever, it's not my opinion. This is just go read go read the Nei Jing, or go read any ancient Taoist books or Chinese medicine books, and it's the same idea. Because the important distinction to realize is that back when all of that stuff was coming about and being formatted and created, human beings had not necessarily yet evolved the obsession and the attachment to our emotional stories and our emotionality and our like mental brain chatter type of thing. And if you look in 5-element theory, you look in Chinese medicine, there's basically 5 emotions. But if you look at Western analysis, there's infinite. There's so much, and there's so many disorders and diseases, and you have too much of this and too much of that, and you're too depressed, and you're too this, and and there's this whole agenda to sort of pasteurize our human experience, the agenda coming from sort of mainstream whatever world, and there's also an agenda that's the same agenda but flipped to a different way, coming from sort of like the new agey spiritual world, where people are just like, I'm just only nice and compassionate all the time, and all this other negative stuff I don't want to deal with, I'm just gonna push it away, and it doesn't exist. Except when I get to vent it out and judge and be very hypercritical and say hateful shit about other people. But then I just create a whole other self-judgment. Whereas, oh, I just said this about this person, then, oh my god, I thought I was compassionate, but now I'm not. It just creates more anxiety, which is not necessarily part of the process or whatever. So really, the point of that is the deeper point, if we want to pull it from Chinese medicine, is that basically all the emotions have their place. They're all natural, they all function, and they're all phases. Meaning another name for 5 elements is 5 phases, or 5 dynamics, or 5 processes, or 5 energetics. And it's only when these things become fixated or stuck, or that they become so dominant that there's no room for any other experience, that an issue tends to arise. So even if that dominant thing is hyper excessive joy and optimism, that's equally, if not, it's just imbalancing as any of the other emotions, because there's 5 of them, and they all go together. But it's again about getting back to harmony. What do you mean by harmony? Well, an easiest example is when we look at music, right? Music is all about harmony. And that's something you don't even have to know anything about music about to understand. Everyone can feel it and hear it. Just like all of the stuff I'm talking about, you don't have to know shit about anything, because you can feel it. It's really easy, it's really simple, but just getting back to that place. So harmony is basically 2 or more notes played together in a way which basically sounds and feels correct. It's true, we can analyze it, we can look at it, we can reflect upon it and say, well, these 2 things together form this particular interval, and this particular interval came out of this particular time period and was used in these songs and these producers and is associated and connotated and denotated with these different things. No, we can do that. But ultimately, that's just talking about something else. It's not necessarily the feeling state that we know in our heart, we perceive directly, which is changing all the time. This is the perfect metaphor, because if you're in a good mood, a certain song hits you in a certain way. You're in a bad mood, the song hits you in a different way. But if you listen to that song expecting always the same response, the same reaction, the same emotion, it's not really ever going to happen. It's just going to be frustrating. It's always changing, just like life, kind of. So ultimately, the point of it is what is felt in the state that is conferred and communicated to the listener. So much in the same way, we can look at the functions of our will, which would be connected to wisdom and connected to the kidney essence, and whether or not that is in harmony or in alignment with the shen of our heart and our thinking brain, but realizing the balance and the harmony of those things. And there's actually a quote from the Deplete Jing which says, when the sage rules, he empties the minds of his people, fills their bellies, and weakens their ambitions, and strengthens their bones. So basically what that means is that when the heart is more leading the way in our body, in our being, our mind tends to quiet down, tends to calm down, and only kick on when we need it to, and then kick off when we don't. And then basically our will is directed and informed by that, and thus maintaining our health, maintaining our jing, maintaining our qi, maintaining the physical structure. Because failing to do so, or failing and stepping out of that, basically takes us out of what we could call our authentic self, which is actually a specific type. There's a specific name for that in Chinese, and a specific type of qi associated with the authentic self, which I don't remember the term for right now. So basically, if we're stepping out of it, then we deplete that authentic qi, which is really a large protective field that we all have. So that then thereby destabilizes our shen and depletes our jing. And these things, again, it's all the same process. It's all the same flow. We're just taking a step back and using the amazing tool that we have as our brain to be able to look at and analyze things. And remembering that really it comes back to just like we would understand a song or understand a harmony, it comes back to the feeling or the state conferred. Because we know we can feel. Sometimes we lose the innate ability that we had when we were kids or we had when we were infants, or maybe not even then, maybe the times before that, who knows. But it's inside of us as a feeling state or as a memory, as something that we just know. So if we talk about Chinese medicine or herbalism or different modalities, really at the core, which is what I talked about in the last video, where I've been talking about it for a long time, is just coming back to that feeling state, coming back to that place, which if we look at the deeper alchemical aspects of Chinese medicine, basically our destiny or our Ming, or whatever you want to call it, stored inside of us, contained within our Jing, contained within our prenatal, pre-heavenly essence. So basically being able to sort of work our way back and really discard and get rid of the stuff that clouds us, meaning the stuff that clouds the mind or the fixed beliefs and ideas and the mental emotional patterns and defense mechanisms that we have that basically block the smooth flow and transition of energy and emotional current in our body, in our life, and really reducing the attachments and the fixations and the stagnations. Because basically the essence here is that where qi is moving and circulating, there's health, and where it's stuck and stagnated, there is a lack of ease. Which all really comes back to understanding the aspects of our will and looking at what is that informed by and what is that directed to. Is it directed and consumed and usurped by anger and bitterness and trying to get other people back and trying to prove how badass we are, or how smart we are, how witty we are, how spiritual we are? Or is it directed towards, who am I? What do I want to do? Why am I here? How can I help people around me? How can I help myself? How can I bring out the gifts that I have? How can I restore and express the virtues that I potentially was born with, or I potentially have the capacity to really embody and express in an easy, effortless, fairly unconscious, natural type of way? There's just different questions we can ask and different places in which we can direct our energy. And that can be as simple as, do I want to stay up till 3 in the morning on the internet watching TV, reading forums and Facebook? Or do I want to go to bed early? Or do I want to read a book and then fall asleep? Or do I want to journal? Do I want to write poetry? These things all direct energy and all affect our nervous system in different ways. So we have very, very big lofty concepts. We're talking about prenatal and postnatal and Jing and but it all comes back to really here and now and simple decisions that we make, looking at what is informing it and really what is going on there. Now, harmonious or not, that it is. Hopefully this has made sense and been helpful. The video is actually way longer than I had originally anticipated. I thought I'd be able to knock this out in like 7 minutes, but here we are at 19 minutes. So I'm going to go have some tea. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and it's given you something useful. Either way, thanks for watching and I'll talk to you soon.